where Lebanon is holding its very first election since the 2019 anti-government protests. So the question, of course, is, are these elections going to become a signal of hope, or will there be yet another failure for the crisis-hit nation? Now, the elections are unlikely to yield a seismic shift. Despite a widespread discontent about the political class, Lebanon's political makeup has plagued the country since the civil war. Now remember, this is half the power is, of course, divided in Lebanon. The president has to be a Maronite, the prime minister will be a Sunni, and the speaker of the parliament must be a Shia. This is meant to transition the country into a post-war situation, but what it has done is that it has allowed the conflict to persist in Lebanon. The politicians separated their portions of the government, used the money to enrich themselves and also the political class. Now, this system has held back the emergence of a non-sectarian political parties, and the elections will of course be the first one since the protests that broke out in October 2019. The governments have failed to chart a path out of the crisis, so when the state failed to provide the basic services, the traditional leaders of course jumped in. Their decades-old patronage networks helped with handouts like fuel and basic goods, while the number of independent candidates has also doubled since 2018. All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what these elections, of course, mean for Lebanon and what can be expected in the political spectrum in the country, we're joined in by our correspondent, Ghadi Francis, who's joining us live from Lebanon at this point of time. Now, Ghadi, this, of course, is going to be a very crucial election for Lebanon, considering the many crises that Lebanon has been dealing with. What does this election mean for the people of the country there?
Good morning to you and to all our viewers from Lebanon. I'm standing in northern Lebanon. Actually, the ballots just opened. People are just starting to come and vote. Just as you mentioned before my piece, the political system, the political elite is expected to reproduce itself with a little bit of change. I know everyone thinks it is a crucial elections for Lebanon because Lebanon is on the brink of a failed statehood. We have lost around 95% of the value of our currency. 80% of the people have reached poverty according to the United Nations, and actually the country is second to last according to the World Index of Happiness. So the frustration in general in Lebanon is supposed to yield a kind of public anger that really went out to the streets in October 2019, but the political elite managed to weather that public anger, and basically a seismic shift is not expected, but people are just starting to come and vote. As you could see in the videos, there are colorful t-shirts and clothing. These colors reflect the traditional different political parties that are fighting. You know, Muhammad, the fight in Lebanon or the competition in the elections is actually on the Christian arena, because traditionally the Shiite part of Lebanon is around 90% pro Hezbollah and Amal movement. The Sunni part is around 90% pro the Arab, the Saudi Arabia, this kind of political influence. But always the Christian arena in Lebanon is where the competition happens. It is basically going to be surprising to everyone. The Free Patriotic Movement, which is backed by President Aoun, was the biggest Christian bloc in the parliament, and it is expected to have some changes after all these years and what happened to Lebanon. Also, there's the Lebanese Forces, which is an ally of Saudi Arabia, openly anti-Hezbollah. And there are many new faces and new civil society faces that are calling for change, that are also running for the first time. I'm in northern Lebanon today, and because it's still very early, people are just starting to come to the ballot boxes.
Absolutely, indeed. Now, one of the key issues in this election is that Asad al-Hariri, he is not going to be contesting in this election. So it appears that the Sunni faction is also something that is up for grabs. And many people say that this could, of course, strengthen the hand of Hezbollah. Is that the sense that people within Lebanon are also getting?
Well, actually, a lot of people are talking about Saad al-Hariri's retreat from politics. He just announced that he will not be in politics for a certain period of time. But you see in Lebanon, it's a kind of tradition that even his leadership, even if he's not running, his leadership, because there's no other Sunni leader, is always there. His retreat really changed. I mean, there's no actual leader or political party that is running, but other Sunni figures are running everywhere. And Sunni voters will always go and vote for the people that they see fit. The thing is that his absence from the political scene has caused absence in the political arena, not in the people. I mean, Sunni people in the country are still here. They are still voting. The influence of new Sunni leaders might emerge, or just actually there will not be a big structure for the Sunnis inside the parliament. Here is where the pro-Saudi Arabia, maybe Lebanese forces and other could actually gain from that. Here in northern Lebanon, later on in the day, we will go to the city of Tripoli, which is basically the biggest Sunni city in Lebanon, and it would reflect what is happening on the Sunni ground in terms of votership.
Absolutely. Now, Ghadi, for people who are looking at this election from outside of Lebanon, in a democracy, every public office must be open for any citizen of the country. But what is interesting that we look at when I look at the political system in Lebanon is that the president has to be a Maronite Christian, the prime minister of Lebanon has to be a Sunni Muslim, and the speaker of the parliament has to be a Shia. How is power divided within Lebanon, and has this system actually helped the country?
Actually, our biggest culprit in our status quo is the system, because it's not a political system. It was basically a deal fixed in the city of At-Ta'if between, Harvard by the United States and between Syria and Saudi Arabia, and that was back in the 90s to stop the civil war. And it's like a deal between these political parties that are based on sects. It was a deal to stop the war and to partition the way they are governing the country. But the deal also said and included that this sectarian system will change. They didn't finish the whole deal. They just managed to start with it and divide the power among themselves and their followers. This sectarian system is actually not a democracy, because just as you mentioned, you have to be from a certain sect to run for a certain office. Now the people who are calling for change, the civil activists, the new political parties, and some of the traditional political parties like the leftists, the communists, and the Syrian social nationalists, these people call for a secular system, a basic change inside the system. But the way it is, it's not even a political system.
Right.
It's just a truce deal that was held in the 90s and that is still dragging us into what we are in right now.
Absolutely, indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Ghadi Francis, for joining us and getting us all those insights there. We'll, of course, come back to you as the day progresses and more voting, of course, happens. This, of course, it remains to be seen as to what results this election will, of course, throw up. But thank you very much indeed for joining us from Lebanon there. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.